It's about creating experiences in these spaces that people engage with their own place and try to not only represent themselves in that space, but also try to think about that space differently and how other people perceive it and how they want other people to perceive it. And that activity and that sort of process is usually done by drinking loads of cups of tea and having biscuits in an empty shop where we can afford to be, or the council gives us a space. And we develop those relationships on a very slow, inviting people in, people sticking their head in going, what are you doing here? Like, why are you here? Why are you in? The first place that we did it in was in Harlow. So the Cultural Olympiad, we got a bit of money to make a piece there. And again, a huge empty shop that we took over, started kind of just putting stuff in there and making art installations in the front, and then getting people to come in, talking to the local community, talking to the shopping center manager, which we were in, talking to the local recycling center that was near us, and then just started making relationships. And that's how it works. Like, it's all about being present, being in a place, and not trying to say, come make art with us. Do you want to make some art? Are you interested in dance? Do you like technology? None of that shit works. It won't draw people in. You'll have students, you'll have some people who are artists interested, but you won't have people who you're trying to reach, which are people who don't really identify with anything that you're doing. And I think a lot for us is about getting people to engage with themselves and engage with their community, and let us know what's important, because we can't go in and tell them, because that's not the point. If we were going to make a piece of art by ourselves about what we thought was important, we wouldn't ask them. So the technology in that project was like some projectors with a clip from one of the women. I think she won the dance-a-thon in like the 60s, and she had a story about it, so we found some old footage and then played that on some projectors. Another woman set up essentially her like front room and had people in for tea and had conversations with them. Some other ladies made some art, and this is like a group of like 70-year-old honorary ladies who were awesome and didn't give a shit about us in a lot of ways, and that was a wonderful perspective and a relationship to have. They were into it in terms of them being able to almost show their artwork, and they told us lots of stories, but it wasn't I find that relationship really nice. When they have nothing, they owe you nothing, you know, so they're there of their own accord and they're getting what they want out of it. We had a Eastern European, a Polish guy come in who's like wrote these incredible poems and spoke to us and recorded them, and was part of an audio tour. We had MP3 players, so it was an audio guided tour. There was music tracks, there was recordings from these people into it. And that was really basic in my terms of technology. It was using an MP3 player. We basically put some music together and put some recordings of some people and their voices in. Some people did drawings and paintings. And then that was the first time that we tried to work with the older people. Were the only ones that were interested in sort of doing movement and dance and being recorded, but they didn't want to really be recorded because they didn't want to see their faces or see themselves in it. So we came up with a technology of using UV lights, so UV cannons, like big ones, having them get into white clothes, and then you couldn't see their face, you couldn't see their hair, you could only see their bodies, and that was what they communicated. Then I went down to the library and got old pictures of some of the architecture, because Harlow actually has an incredible amount of sculpture and architecture that was made because it was a new town. So then I composited them dancing on top of these pieces of architecture around the town, and then displayed that again. And that was our process with that. It was very scattered, almost a shotgun approach, but we just took in what they wanted to do rather than told them what they should do. And that's where we became Make Amplify, where my partner and I sort of decided that what we both valued was people's, if the only way we succeed is if people come away from it feeling like it was about them and that they are more able to be creative and to be artists. They realize that part about themselves. So that's our measure of success in our projects. It's not how amazing it looks and how well it went for the council and how the funders, but from the people that we work with, if they go away feeling proud and feeling happy with what they've done, then that's the most important part. So technology is how we're interested in them engaging in technology because it's around us all the time. And the more that they see it as something that's common rather than something that's far away and distant, the more possibility they have to feel comfortable with it and to engage with it on their own terms. And that's really important. So that was the first project we did. Should I do the most recent one, or should I do it kind of chronologically?
I like the chronology, so I like the Hull.
Yeah,
Hull is great because it deals with people who are claimants and projected and given another status. I think that was a really fabulous project.
I'll skip Stratford, where we did a similar approach. Maybe I'll come back to it later. But in Hull,
keep it in.
Okay. So Stratford, we then got asked to do a project in Stratford for all the people who didn't get to go. So the Olympics were in Stratford, in London, but most of the people in Stratford just got their lives destroyed, and it sucked. Buses, roads. One apartment building of one of our participants had air-to-ground missiles. No, ground-to-air missiles. So proper missiles, as in ones that the army would fire at a ship that came in to kill everybody at the Olympics or something. And then they couldn't go back into their apartment because that's what was on the, like, just mad stories, right? So some people never went into the Olympics, never got to see it, but it was right there. Some people had the most amazing experience of their lives because they were, what's the bullshit term for volunteers that don't get paid and have to do a lot of work? I think it was like some fancy term for taking advantage of people. But they had the most incredible experience of their lives. Got to volunteer in the Olympics. It was amazing. We went to an empty shop in Stratford. We had a bunch of cups of tea. Sorry, had a bunch of cups of tea. Had a wonderful group of people that just kept coming back and devoting their time to us. And we did the same filming technique again, where people were really interested, but they didn't really want to see their faces. So we had the white clothes. That was about them taking ownership of that space again. And we used the film technology, and then we projection mapped in that instance onto a 40-meter. We made them 40 meters big, so as big as like the billboards for Usain Bolt, and then they were next to it, and it was like they were becoming as big as the most popular athletes, where they live, in a place that they would have been around and never gone into. Still, the perimeter of that Olympic Park was still off limits. And we had to be on the outside of that. Even the people who were commissioned to make this piece of work had to be the outside of that. And we went onto one of the Cofley energy towers and did a 40-meter projection. And again, it was wonderful. The sense of community, the sense of family, all these different people that would have never talked to each other came together and had a wonderful time and felt that it was theirs. And again, that's really important. So it was in their community, trying to cover the things that we're talking about. It's about place. It was about transforming. Is that what we're doing? Transforming place. So that transformative experience for them, but also transforming that space into theirs, and then taking over the space and ensuring that it was about them. And making good piece of art. I mean, I do think the art was really good as well.
It's really interesting because the students of the street arts degree performed at the Olympics, and I got a chance to talk to the volunteers, the people that were really operating on a voluntary basis, and I would say to them, "Are you allowed any tickets to go into the Olympics?" They said, "Oh no, we're not given any tickets. We just volunteer." And I said, "Don't you think this is a little bit exploitative?" And they said, "No, we're doing it for England." And it was quite a very strong sense of that.
And there was people from all around the world that come and just like pay money to volunteer at the Olympics. It's wild. And there's a group of people that go all around the world to do this. And the people who are in the nation that get to do it, like it was, by all means, they talk about it and they glow. It's just the most amazing experience of their life. Fair enough. That sounds, if that's what it did for you, amazing. So we got that, and then we got I'd say the entire other side of the spectrum, as in it was terrible. We never got to go in. It was completely disruptive. Our housing prices went up. Our rents went up. Everything was disturbed. It was the most amazing thing I've ever done in my life. And that was the spectrum we were looking for, I guess, in terms of we wanted to have a representative experience, not a we aren't really into glorifying the government or their processes or the Olympics in any way, because we don't think or agree that most of it's good in most cases. As a blanket statement, there's a lot of things that could be better. It's not bad, there's a lot of worse places, but we are by no means going to be the talking head for the governments and how amazing they think they are by giving little bits of money to artists to make something look amazing for them, when they should just give that money to the people who need it, who we're working with, who could use it otherwise. Slightly different subject. So Hull, from that, someone in Hull, I think we went up there and did a presentation of some sort. One of the artistic directors of the City of Culture of Hull in Hull saw our piece, saw our work, and thought it would be the most appropriate for telling this story. The story that needed to be told was young people in the benefit system within the UK and what their experience was. So the starting point is a group of people who are in need. It's not people that everything's all right. It's a group of people that needed help. And the stories that we told from the young, so we interviewed young people who were a part of a community at a place called the Warren, which is a community center for young people in Hull that's incredible. Does wonderful work, let alone just being there for people who want to have a warm, safe space. They do music projects, they do film projects, they do so many incredible pieces of work. So we found the young people that were part of this story there. And we interviewed them and sort of recorded the interviews. We then started to form sort of stories and storytelling. Most of it wasn't good. You know, most of their experiences were getting very little help, getting pushed around, not being listened to, and the reason they're there were terrible, like terrible. So this is the story that we were telling for the City of Culture for their launch, so everybody could be excited and have this wonderful cultural experience. So coming away from that, what we found was the story that seemed predominant, and especially in Hull, I'd say, I've spent a lot of time there and I love it there, is this attitude that they all will take care of each other, and what comes of it is a strengthened spirit, like an obvious spirit, and a spirit that pushes through and made it out and was okay, or at least okay enough, you know. And so we had stories. What's the right terminology for what we do? I think what we do, pedestrian, is it called pedestrian? That might be even a simpler term. What a lot of the choreography that we create is not dance in a lot of ways. It's pedestrian isn't the right term, isn't it?
No, I don't think so. But
People in dance, do you guys, what's the word for something that's common or sort of something you see all the time? Yeah, like standing in line, waiting for something, looking at paperwork, like all the processes. But we composited all this imagery. Again, we did do a cast this time. We did have dancers involved. We did have movement. We did have a for us, which is quite fancy. Instead of an empty shop, we had a dance studio, which was nice. It did the filming properly, and had this story composited of all these really hard times, but coming out of it, a group of people that came together and supported each other within the community. So then the technology does come in here. So the technology was, again, filming in white and black, no faces, kept it anonymous, but also kept that we were able to represent lots of different groups of people in costume, and some in reality, but you know, to try to have an array of people. And then we went and projection mapped those people onto all over Hull at night, guerrilla, no permission asked, benefits building. What's it called? I think they have another name for it now, but job center.
yeah,
Job center. Old factories that were run down, the old docks that were run down, an old theater where Jimi Hendrix played and loads of people played, the back of that everybody would recognize, but very iconic Hull locations. We projected these people on scale that was pretty incredible, like 20, 30, 40 meters big. All the clips that we made, we then projection mapped them, and then filmed them, and then composited all of that together to make the final piece that was then projected mapped again onto another area within Hull. It was successful. I think again, the best thing that we felt from it was that people in Hull thought it was the most representative of them, which again is the success for us, is like, yeah, city culture, yeah, the news, but like, are the people that we're working for, which in our terms were the people of Hull and the young people of Hull, did they feel that they were represented in that? And from the accounts of most people, that was the case, and we felt good about the piece. We thought it was a strong one. Technology transforming. I say transforming for that one was knowing there's so much history in all these factories in Hull and all the docks. That's where most of the people in Hull would have worked, and they're almost all run down and shut down. And we were sort of paying attention to those as very important parts of the culture, rather than things that needed to be washed away and put to the side because new things were coming in. Is that covering the topic?
Yeah, that's nice. I've got a couple of questions from what you said.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, first of all, I'm sort of really happy to see this kind of use of technology, but also keeping and maintaining engaging communities, working basically. It's so easy to use technology to glorify a town by basically using it in all sorts of different ways, and you come away with a very sort of different attitude if you take that attitude towards your technology and use of it, whether it be wall mapping or glorification of past history or whatever it might be. So that's what I was really interested in your work. Question: when you're commissioned to come in and work with a community, what issues do you have about coming in, doing something, and then leaving? Because in a practice I'm involved with, that's always been a problem, in the sense you come in, you work, and how you leave legacy basically in it. Is this an issue that I should be bringing up? Or
oh, absolutely,
okay.
Because it's the one that we find hardest and the one that breaks our heart the most, I guess. Because what we're doing is coming in, doing something amazing, and then leaving. And as much as what we do is amazing, I think, and is really useful, what do you leave the people that you've been working with, and how do they move forward with that and do anything useful with it and feel that energy? And we don't have an answer for sure, because we have the same question. One of the things that we're doing now is we're trying to work and make pieces in the community we live in, so that we do make things around us, and we do see those people and those conversations continue. We've done a bit of that. I think the most appropriate way, or a very useful way of approaching that challenge, is to involve and become a part, to reach out to communities, to organizations, community groups, people who live there, to start the process of working with and finding those people, so that when you leave, those connections are still there. And what you hopefully leave is the ability and skill set and experience that things can be continued, I guess, in the best way possible. And a point of contact to say, if you want to do any of these things and you're interested in them, please get in touch. We'd love to help still. But it's about money, like if we had as much money, if the government here supported the arts in the way they support oil, we could continue these relationships for the rest of our lives, and it would be a part of my life to go up to Hull once every 2 weeks to keep in touch with those people, keep developing those skills, keep hoping that we can encourage that. But we have an end of a budget. There's never enough money. And then we got to start over again.
I mean, at the same time, I don't underestimate the power of what you do, because actually going into these into the towns and actually talking and working with communities also leaves them implicitly with a lot of information, a lot of empowerment in what they're after, and the very fact you offer models of practice as well is very strong. And never underestimate the actual impact that it leaves inside somebody.
Absolutely.
The memory of that is really strong.
And it's the same for us, when that connection is sincere and and the relationship isn't about power and isn't about telling people what to do, then you have friendships. You know, you meet people and you have relationships and you see them over and over again, and the kids grown up and the grandparents' story, and like so much of what we gain out of this as people is history. Like, I love people and I love culture and I love art. Those are the things that I care about more than anything else, and I'm interested in more than else. So when people give us their stories about their lives, those don't have to always be a part of what we make, but it's such a important, like it fulfills me, and it makes me feel better about the world. It makes me understand the world around me more, and it makes me be able to relate to people that I might not have been able to relate to in the same way. And one of the magic things, I'll just slightly go off because of that, sort of bringing that up, is the older women in that group in Harlow and the Polish man and the younger English man did not understand each other when we started that project. When the older women heard the poetry and saw the pictures and heard the poetry from the younger Englishman, they said out loud, "I had no idea that that's what that guy thought, or that's what they felt, or that's who they were." And they would literally be on the other side of the street from each other, if possible, before that point. And they came together and knew each other afterwards. And like, that is the, cherry on top arts council, blah, blah, blah thing line that you can say. But, that was because we created a space where they all felt safe, and we don't have, the rules in our engagement is you have to be nice, like respect all around. That's the only one we do. We don't do a bunch of list of things you can't do. We just do, like, you have to be nice, and you have to be considerate. And if you aren't, you can't join in. You can't be a part of it. It's very simple. It's very clear. We expect good manners. We expect good behavior, and we expect nice people to be nice. That doesn't mean you can't be grumpy. You can't be argumentative. You can't be all those things, because those can all exist while being respectful and nice. But that space we create is evident from the first time people come in as to what we talk about, and is the only way you can make something like that work. I'd argue is the only way you can make anything work in the world. But people veer away from that when they get into power and dynamics and who's the boss and who's got knowledge and who's the best place to make the rules. Can I talk about the stuff I'm doing now?
Could I ask? Sorry.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you your current projects.
Yeah. So
that'll be really interesting, because in a way, I'm probably the worst person to be talking about technology, because I'm very old school where I've come from. And yet increasingly all practices are, have to involve digital, have to be technological based, etc., etc. And in a way, our practice is very much advancing along those lines as well. But the thing that really intrigued me was, and I don't quite understand it, you were talking about being able to sort of like be almost global and local in relation to working with a digital, with mobile phones in a local street. In that way. Could you explain something of that practice?
Yeah,
that would be really interesting.
I'll talk about the thing that we haven't been able to fund because no one understands it, and it's too risky. It's exactly what they're asking for, but they don't understand it, and it's too risky, so they won't fund it. That's the project we're working on, that we've sort of had to put to the side because we can't survive because no one's funding it, so we have to do something else, which is a part of it. So the way that we think about technology is that we've all got phones. Pretty much nowadays, everybody has a phone, and that it is an incredible computer, and there's a phone attached to it. So how we think about the computers is that is the most accessible way to use technology, and the way that we would most prefer to engage with people. So we want to create an experience where using augmented reality. So people come to a performance, they watch a live show, but they also have a screen, which the reason we're making this piece is because we're so pissed off with people putting up screens during shows that have a shitty version of the show that they'll never watch again, that is disturbing everything and making it worse. So we thought, how do we combat that besides saying, You can't have your phones, put your phones away. You know, in a concert hall, you might be able to do that. We never work in a concert hall or a theater. We work within the outdoor space. So it was how do you utilize that piece of technology to make an even more interesting show, but also how do you direct them to put it away when it's unnecessary? We don't know yet, but we think it's worthwhile, and we think it's an important, because those rules aren't made yet, and because no one's doing it yet properly, we also are at a point where we can say, we can have an influence on how that works. And that's really interesting to us, because we aren't Sony and we're not Disney. We are artists who are interesting, engaging, and making incredible things that people want to be a part of and interact with and contribute to. So the piece that we wanted to make, which again, we're not sure we're gonna, or we put to the side, is about a journey that a group of people take because of climate change has changed their home to the point where they have to leave it, and what that journey entails and what they encounter. But it's going to have live dance, projection mapping, lighting, 360-degree sound, whether it's in earphones or in a sort of setting where the sound will move with the picture, and augmented reality characters and content a part of the show. So we want to create a show where the augmented reality characters are choreographed and performing with the live cast. I do want to show you a video to show a bit of that, and I'll try to get the show reel to make that happen at some point. But the reason we think that is important is because if you do that well, what augmented reality gives you the opportunity to do is things that are not possible in reality. Like, that's what a lot of people forget about virtual reality and augmented reality is, don't try to make the shit that exists in real life. That's here. Don't make a table. We know what a table looks like, and we know what a table feels like. Make a table that's made of worms or snakes or like coral shells, and there's things moving out in and out of it. Make something more interesting than reality. Make something at a scale that you could never see. So one of the pieces of content that we were going to make was a cargo ship, like full of cargo. Sorry, my words. I think I've got dyspraxia to some extent with my words. They're just there, but I can't see them. Cargo containers. So if you've ever been next to one of those ships, they're ginormous, right? Like they are hundreds of feet tall, hundreds and hundreds of feet long, and next to you would seem gigantic. So we want to introduce scale into a small boat floating through the sea and a shipping container that might run it over and doesn't care. Like, that is impactful. That could give you an idea of what that would feel like. And that is something that augmented reality can do in a real-time setting with people at scale, and then a container ship going by. So our creatures were undersea creatures. So one was an octopus, and then it turned into a rat, I think. But like, what's tremendous about technology is that you can do things that are impossible in reality. And that can have an impact on people that makes them have more empathy, understanding of concepts that may be too far or too hard for them to understand when it's a piece of paper or an article. And that's what dramatic and theater and art can also do. So it's the combination of that technology. What we wanted to do is put that on people's street. Now, again, the cost implications are huge for that, which is why we're not getting any funding. But that show could transform how people see themselves, and we could have the water level rising. We could have us all underwater, and essentially, one of the main ideas is like the current of underwater coming around you, and you looking at other people through your screen and seeing in real time the water flow around the people around you. So because cameras and sensors in phones are so good, we're reaching a point where you can the camera can give data to the server and the computer to let them know where they are in the space. So that the content that is essentially a video or sort of 3D object content can then recognize that they're there and go around them or go over them. And that to us is super cool. Like that would be, I would love to be, I want to be in that situation. I want to see that thing. And that's what we're trying to create. It's something that doesn't use technology in a gimmicky way or saying, look what you can do, but it doesn't actually mean anything. It doesn't do anything relative to yourself and the people around you. It just does something fancy that is really expensive compositing that does all the bells and whistles, but doesn't actually mean anything. And that's, again, where we find hard to get funding because we're trying to make something meaningful and have all that interesting things. But so technology, the site bit being that we want to do that in people's front yards. We want to do it on a street, close down a street, and make it about a community in a neighborhood having that experience together. So that's sort of parked to the side. We can't do that. We'll work to do that. It may happen, whatever. We've had to sort of come to terms with it, put it to the side for now. We'll keep working on it. The aspect of the current project I am working on is trying to have augmented reality interactive experience where we go to a site, we map the site, we 3D scan the site, and then we put essentially a black and white outline of the site in front of people and they color it in. So they can use the paint bucket and just push a part of it and turn it a color, or hopefully in an advanced mode that we develop, they can do proper artistic expression through brushes and through different sort of yeah, I guess brush is the best term. Graffiti, you know, like some of them have spray cans. If you do drawings and things, like some of them will have different sort of canvases. Yeah. Yeah. So the most interesting part in terms of it being a group activity, all right, is that multiple people could be working on the same piece at once and see what everybody else is doing at the same time, so that you're working together to make something. That would be recorded in time lapse so that you could replay the process of it making. It could be output as PNGs or image files so people could take something home with them. And then at the end, this could also be projection mapped, depending on the time and the place and the budget, could be projection mapped in real time if it was at night and it was dark enough, or at night could be projection map that process so that everybody could see it, not just people through devices. So that's the thing that I think I can get money for. Someone's already said they want to give me a bit of money, and I think I can get a bit more money for and a bit more money for, is an aspect of the bigger show. But I feel like that could then be socially provocative and not just about art. I think you could go to government buildings or places of protests or places where a negotiation needs to be had, and people could say what they wanted to say in those spaces with, again, the rule, don't be a dick. Like, you have to be respectful. If you're disrespectful and you draw penises and you say racist and homophobic and sexist things, you can't participate. You know, like, and I think that language has to be very straight at the beginning. If you do any of these things, that's not what it's about, and you will be asked to leave, and you can't, and your things will be erased. You know, like, I know there's freedom of speech there, but I think someone has to say there's a here's a line. Don't be mean to people. If you're mean, you can say very critical things, and that's what it's here for, but don't be mean to people, you know? And I think, to me, there's a very beautiful art experience there that's a group activity that's interactive, that can have kids that are 3 years old and incredibly proficient, incredible professional artists and anything in between. But I also think that you could write and say things and have a voice where usually you wouldn't have an opportunity to say those things. And it can be visual and public. And then it can be documented. And then hopefully the people inside the building come outside the building, go, what's this all about? So you should really listen to this. It's about you and how you need to change what you're doing based on the feedback of the public around you.